So I am Ashutosh. You could call me Ash. I lead the insights analytics for Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. If you people haven't heard about Regeneron, we are into we are a mid-sized biotech based out of New York. One of the things that was interesting, I think maybe this kind of really jogs your memory, is like we built a COVID antibody cocktail that was given to President Trump, when he had COVID. And it was like not even approved, right, in the market. And it actually truly saved his life. So that was one incident that I wanted to remind everybody, we do have very critical medications that we build, and that's of course life-saving drugs that we build. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about an interesting topic, and listening to Tyler, it was like you are actually kind of getting bombarded with so many political campaigns. How do you make your investments really smart, right? So one of the things that we have done is we have created a trifecta of measurement, right? Working with my partners in crime, like Bula is here. Bula, you want to raise your hand? She's from HMI, right? Horizon Media, and then Surya, who's from Ipsos. So we actually work very collaboratively, right? And ensure that, as we are building thank you so much. As we are building the measurement framework, right, we are actually collecting the right data sources and ensuring that, as we are building our media planning strategies, we are always thinking ahead, right? Like, how would you going to measure the success? And like, what does it look like, right? You establish the KPIs, establish the right measurement framework so that there is trust and reliability in what you're producing for marketers to take action on, right? So that is really the crux of what I'm going to talk about and what it entails today, right? So let's forward. All right. I think it might be a little bit new to many of you guys folks, but I think the idea is that I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the commercial ecosystem that we have in pharmaceuticals, because it's more complex than retail or CPG world. So I want to kind of touch base a little bit on that. Some of you guys might be familiar, but not everybody. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it entails. I know, like Medtronic, you guys are probably very familiar, but I think, many of the folks here are not familiar. So we'll talk a little bit about the complexity, and then how do we think about patient journeys and how do we activate those patient journeys for different diseases. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the partnership framework. So I think this slide talks a little bit about the complexity, right? We are not just talking to patients, we're talking to healthcare providers, we're talking to payers. If I think about when a drug launches, right, what you really need to understand is that before even a drug launches, you've got to really ensure that you've done a lot of market research around, what the payers are going to reimburse that drug for, right? What is that pricing strategy, right? So thinking about that, and then thinking about, okay, well, as you are about to launch, you have negotiated with payers to ensure the reimbursement is in place before you launch it, right? So that is one key stakeholder that we work with. But then, ensuring that the patients are educated on there is something going to be in the market, right? So there is a DTC component, which is the direct-to-consumer component, right? We need to educate our patients so that they are actually, they are educated and they go back to the physician asking for the treatment of choice that they want to kind of take. And then, of course, the physicians who are actually writing the therapy, right? So the idea is that, when, the physicians are the ones who are going to be making the decision, right, for a given patient. So we want them to really be, be educated on what the treatment is, like what you should be sort of what are the right patient types that you should be writing it for, and what are the right, which are the patients that you shouldn't be kind of talking about that, right? So just kind of really the whole ecosystem is so complex that you really have to intercept all of these, or really map out your patient journeys in advance and say, these are our leverage points, these are our differentiation points, and then how do you activate them, right, through the journeys. So that's in a nutshell, the consumption model, right? And again, talking about patients, right? So the patients themselves can be either very educated, right? Or they will not be educated, and the first time they hear about something is when they go and see their physician, right? So the patient journey is not very linear, right? It kind of bounces around. So the idea is that unless you have thought through, right, all the different touch points that you're going to have in that patient journey, and thinking about some of the patients will be very educated and some of the patients are not going to be educated till they actually reach the physician, right, is critical, right? So there are different patient journeys, and how do you activate those patients across different journeys, right? So that's in a nutshell the problem that we are trying to solve, right? So you have to collect all these data points from patient and physician level and connect all the dots, right? And then kind of put a measurement framework that allows you to say, is my media activating, right, the right strategy that I'm building for patients or physicians? So that's the complication, right? So, I think we've talked a lot about the different KPI reporting, test and control, but what we really feel that it's good to have those traditional reporting models, right? You want to kind of really look at your click-through rates. You want to kind of look at establish your KPIs for key site actions, ensure that, when you're sending an email to a physician, they're clicking and you're monitoring those. So those are the right KPIs, but then also test and control, right? So if you are kind of really piloting something new, you're establishing A/B testing, right, for a different creative and things like that. But what we really wanted to put in place is connecting all those lead indicators to the lagging indicators, right? Ensuring there is a full funnel, right, of measurement that is in place, right? So right from any action that you take, so what is the lead indicator that tells you that action is actually having meaningful results? But then at the same time, kind of really looking at the lagging indicator, meaning like product sales, right? So although the product sales will happen only after 2 or 3 months, but the idea is like you are actually able to analyze all those correlations and ensure that this leading indicator creates that lagging indicator in terms of product sales, right? So that is what we are doing, right, in terms of unified attribution model, right? So the first is marketing mix, of course. I think many of you guys have already talked about it, so not to bore you with details, right? Marketing mix is just overall like looking at top-down approach, right, of looking at all the channels and ensuring that we have a holistic framework to measure, right, how each channel is contributing to the product sales. But then the second part of the multi-touch attribution, what we are doing is at the patient level, right? So we are taking the sort of patient level data from like de-identified like digital like IDs, which are coming from LiveRamp, and then you are thinking about the patient health claims data, right? So you're joining them, the two data sources to kind of really build a universe at the patient level that allows you to kind of really look at a very granular level of data, right? So you're connecting patient dots, right? And then sort of building everything up, right? So there is a bottoms-up approach in the MTA framework, right? The multi-touch attribution that allows us to truly understand the patient journeys very granularly, right? So say like, now given that you've connected the digital IDs to a patient ID, you know that these are the patients which are not on therapy yet, but then they went in, they clicked this, this banner ad, they went to the site, they got educated, and then finally we see the claims coming through for them at the treatment site, right? So there's a whole like journey elements are covered in that data. And the idea is that you'll kind of really analyze all those journeys and say like, what is really working for me and what is not working, right? So that allows you to kind of piece together a big sort of puzzle, right? And then you are continuously monitoring and updating, right, your factors as you go along. So those are the sort of aspects of the unified attribution that we have created, right, for our brands. Because the end of the day, depends on the brand, and if the brand is really going after a small patient population, this becomes really even more critical, right? So we had to try to find those like, smaller patient populations from different source of media that we are buying, right? So I think just kind of taking a little bit of a step back, right? One of the key problems that we are trying to solve with unified attribution is also that every time we have a agency partner or we have a sort of like, a person who has a solution, they come in and they talk about, well, we're going to give you the measurement as well. And we really didn't want to do that, right? Like, as an agency, like you should not be measuring what you're kind of doing in the marketplace. So the idea was to kind of really take a little bit of an objective approach and say like, well, we are creating a unified attribution approach. You give us the data that will allow you to kind of us to measure your program effectively. And that sort of like, is a part of the puzzle, right? On the right side. So that's what we are able to do, and I think that has been the partnership with Ipsos team. So we really make sure that any sort of we can work with any publisher, any creative agency. The idea is that all the data that we get should be pumped into this framework and then gets analyzed, right, and optimized. So what are the key questions that we are answering, right? So they are like some of the key strategic questions that we are answering, which are the the marketing mix media model. So what is the contribution of each channel towards your business objective? In this case, it could be sales, getting new patients, any of that, right? There are, what is the optimal budget for each investment that you're making? What is how is it changing, 6 months over 6 months or year over year, right? Like how is the contribution changing for each of those channels? And then finally, I think the planning element comes really from the MTA, right? Because what we have done is we actually have scheduled weekly and monthly meetings in combination with the Trifecta, right? So meaning the measurement partner, the media partner, and we actually kind of really have a very trusted and sort of like good relationship where we understand, okay, well, what is working, what we should be kind of really documenting, and what does that log look like, right? As you're testing and measuring it, right? It's important to not just sort of, give the recommendations, but also to kind of really create a log of activities that you are changing so that end of the day, like you can go back and say like, well, we changed this, enhance the result, right, that you're seeing, right? So you're able to explain that to marketing teams very quickly. So that is the sort of trusted partnership that we have created by kind of doing a combination of those two. And the good part is that since these two programs are connected, there's never an argument about, oh, our marketing mix is saying that this channel gives you 4:1 ROI, and your MTA is saying like this is giving you 2:1 ROI, right? So the idea is that like once we have created this unified approach, because both the programs are talking to each other, and we only have one partner who does both. So the idea is that like there is never a disjointed sort of like readout, right, from any of those two programs. So that's the good part about kind of really organizing these analytics in a nutshell. And again, I think we spoke a little bit about this, right? So the attribution model, which is really at the individual patient-physician level, really learns from the marketing mix and vice versa, right? Marketing mix also learns from the attribution program modeling. So there is like machine learning feedback loops that exist between the two programs that allows us to continuously optimize the campaigns. So also, since we've created this big universe, right, it also helps us with improvement in targeting itself, right? Because now we know like what sequence of things is actually working in our favor, what sequence is giving us the better results. So it could really help us with improved right targeting, ensuring that we actually, if we're launching new content, right, what kind of journeys is that content giving us or delivering for us? So like basically, it really helps us with the omnichannel efforts, right? Right content, right targeting, and right, the right timing, right? So when we create this entire like data source or sort of like connected data, it allows us to do many different things in terms of next best action that are relevant for a given audience. So that's where I think we are at, and I think the program has been launched for like 2.5 years, and I think we've received really like a lot of feedback and really kudos, and we've scaled it out to multiple brands. So it's not just one brand running this anymore, like we're running it across the portfolio pretty much. So this has been great. But I think how did we really accomplish this, right? So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the partnership, right, and the planning framework. So I think it all starts with like what the key business objectives are, right? So the brand and marketing teams are going to come in. They're going to talk about like, well, our goal right now is to kind of really increase your awareness by almost 15% or 20%, right? When you're talking about your brand and there's competition in the sort of like marketplace, the idea is like how do you really achieve that higher awareness? And then at the same time, like how do you get new patients, right? So that could be a business objective. So that being the business objective, we kind of really go and talk about, okay, well, what does it mean in terms of activating these patients or finding these patients at the right channel and the right content, right? So then it goes to like building the insights partnership, first understanding what those personas look like, what are those personas like from market research perspective. So you see like a lot of these circles, right? We have market research, we have the social media KPIs, right, that we have to really think about what is the consumer perception. The creative agency itself is working on the right content and creative. So all of us come together as a team and say like, well, we know what the brand objectives are. Now, like, how do we really act upon it, identify those personas, and build the content and the sequences that really matter, right? Or they will kind of really move the needle for that objective. And then again, finally, I think anything is incomplete if we don't have a measurement plan in place, right? So we actually want to ensure that as we are doing this planning cycle, we are actually also thinking actively about how are we going to measure success for any given campaign that we're launching. So like all of this sort of goes in circle, and it's more like a closed loop, right? So you kind of run the campaign, you iterate, and then keep going, right? So that's how we sort of like created that ecosystem. And then lastly, I think this is again really going a little bit more deeper into the process, right? So kind of really business objectives are defined for physician level and the consumer, right? Then you kind of really go to how do you really now take the strategic approach of what are the channel objectives or DTC objectives versus HCP media objectives, right? So clearly defining what those objectives are, working with your agency partners and saying that, well, these are the key goals by channel or by each campaign, right? Also like could be by persona and audiences, right? So defining those granular level goals with your agency partners comes second. And then finally, I think the third level is, you actually have, since you have been learned, many times these campaigns are not new. You've already done multiple campaigns. So like bringing all those historical learnings, right, whether it is from some media side or for insights analytics side, right, we really kind of talk through and say what have we already learned, right, that we don't need to kind of repeat our mistakes. So ensuring that we have the lessons learned going in as we are planning, right. The next part is the budget allocation, right. So once we have done all of that, right, what are budget allocation models kind of really is predicated upon like what are the key objectives, but at the same time thinking about what are the new like test and learn agendas that we want to create, right, at budget allocation, right? So there's certain things that we know are working great and we should continue those, but then there might be like 10 or 15% of the budget that you want to allocate for innovation and say like, well, we haven't tried this sort of partner yet, right, who can really be helpful in integrating or helping us with, I mean, we talked a lot about the AI, sort of driven content and things like that, right? So how do we really create different kinds of innovation pilots within that budget allocation? And then how are we going to measure it, right? Are we ready to kind of really execute those innovation pilots as well, right? So some of that happens in the budget allocation, and then, of course, then we go to the tactics, right? And ensuring all, we are kind of planning by each tactic and by each channel, right, over time. So that was it. I think I'm going to just end my presentation. I know like we're short on time, but I think we are going to continue some of this theme in the round table as well. So we'll go from there. Okay. Want to take any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple time for some questions.
I'm Diana. We work a lot in the pharma healthcare space, and I wanted to ask you, because a lot of our partners say that HIPAA regulations are something that impact their ability to collect data on their audience. So can you talk about, is that something you experience, and if so, kind of how do you navigate that to understand who your audience is?
Yeah, I think so. Well, everything that we do is HIPAA regulated. Like, we know the regulations, right? But what we have done is like, we have established a clean room, right? So it's not really sitting with us as much. It sits with a third party. And the idea is not to really do patient level sort of like targeting, right? The idea is to really create personas from the data that we collect and sort of execute against those personas, right? You try to find out, like, create those audiences, which are clusters of patients, not individual patients, right? So that it remains HIPAA compliant. And so we are not like, and again, I think I would say like you will really truly, will not be doing justice to like, if you're kind of really truly reaching out to one patient anyways, right? So the idea is like, not to being offensive to the patient. So the idea is like, you need to know about like their consumption habits without being sort of really creepy, right? In that sense. So I think we learn all of that and then we apply it, right? In like at a more like cluster level and persona level, right?
Okay, other questions? Okay. All right, we can keep this conversation going. Ash will be hosting one of our roundtable sessions in just a few moments. Thank you so much. Everybody give a hand. Ash Katiyar, Executive Director, Commercial.